there and welcome back. My name is Kallie Branciforte if you happen to be new here. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking with you guys about some of my tips and tricks I use for living in a small home. Now, let's just go ahead and start this video with like a little disclaimer, all right? Because small home is a relative term. I know that there are homes much smaller than mine. This is not meant to say that my home is like so tiny. I'm very well aware that many families live in dwellings smaller than this. But our home is 1,100 square feet, and considering that we have 2 young children and my husband and I both work from home full-time, a lot of people would consider this to be on the tighter side of things. And I also know that there are many other families like ours living in similar smaller sized homes, and so that's why I wanted to share this video. We actually purposely did not seek out a really large house, and I truly do enjoy living in a smaller space for a couple of reasons. One, I think it forces me to be very mindful of what I bring into my home. There's only so much space here, and so every little thing matters. 2, it is easier to maintain. I mean, it's just less square feet, right? Less to clean, less to repair, less to heat, less to cool, just less. And 3, it has allowed us to buy a house that wasn't at the top of our budget. This has given us a ton more wiggle room in our budget and the type of financial freedom that we want for things like renovations and savings. All that being said, smaller houses certainly do have their challenges, mostly due to just lack of space. So let's dive into some of my best tips for maximizing your small house. All right, my first tip is to maximize each room by giving them multiple purposes. I will never forget the time I saw a diagram that was published by UCLA during a study that they did all about Americans getting bigger and bigger homes. And in it, they studied one very typical American family and recorded their exact location in their home over an extended period of time using like GPS and cameras and stuff. And the diagram looked like this. You can see that a huge portion of the family's home is barely used, while 2 small areas made up 68% of the time the family spent in their home. I think that sometimes we fall into the idea that rooms have to be the rooms that they're like categorized as in, right? We think that we have to have certain rooms. We have to have a formal dining room, even though many families rarely eat in the dining room 99% of the time, but we gotta have it because where else would we have Thanksgiving dinner? Or we have to have a guest bedroom for when someone else comes to stay, and we don't use that guest bedroom any other times. Or we have to have a home office so that we have a place to keep our computer and I don't know, like paper clips or whatever. Do you get what I'm saying? We just sort of like have these ideas of rooms we think that we have to have in our house. But the problem with that is then you end up with rooms that don't really serve a purpose for a large majority of the day or even the year. So instead, I'm all about maximizing spaces so that many of our rooms can serve multiple purposes and be used to their full potential. So here's an example. We have 2 kids and 3 bedrooms in our house. And yes, my husband and I both work from home full time, so where do we work? When our second baby joined us, we moved my husband's office into our bedroom. Because what's the purpose of our bedroom? We use it to sleep and maybe like get dressed, and that's about it, right? We're not using it during the day, and we're not working when we're sleeping, and we're not sleeping when we're working. So this room could easily serve both of these purposes. Sure, maybe it's not Pinterest perfect to have a desk in your bedroom, but for us it's an extremely effective use of space, maximizing the space to serve multiple purposes. Another example is we have one big great room that's our living room and dining room. We're in it right now, but we've maximized it to serve multiple purposes as well. Okay, so this is sort of like our great room. We have a dining space and living space over here, and obviously this jungle jumper, which obviously goes very much with the aesthetic of our house. But 1, guys, this is a real house that I live in. This is not an Instagram house. And 2, yes, it's ugly, but my baby loves it a lot, so I don't really care. Anyways, we also have a spot for our kids here under the television with my son's big comfy chair, and behind that we hide a little basket of baby toys for Finley, so we can easily swap this from a living room to a play area very quickly. But it also makes it really easy to tidy up if we're having guests come over. We also have a child's table on the side of our dining area. I love this because there's like a kid spot to eat when we have company, but it also doubles as Miles's arts and crafts and activity table. And this space also serves as my office, believe it or not, because of this secretary desk. It holds all of my work supplies, and when it's time for me to work, this part just pulls out to create a desk, and all I need to do is grab one of the chairs from the dining room table, and I'm ready to get to work. Now, one of my best tips for working in a big space like this and making it serve multiple uses is to create zones. You can create zones a few different ways by using decor and furniture in a specific way. Now we have these pillars in our space, so that automatically helps us separate the dining area from the living area. But I also added a rug under our dining space. You can see that before we had the rug, this table felt like it was kind of just floating in this big room. But when I added the rug, what it did is it helped anchor it. It helped define this as its own space.
Oh, so beautiful. I love it. I love it, Callie.
Wow,
such a good job.
Oh my god, wow, thanks. See how it makes it look like a space? Do you see how it does that?
Sure, yes. It looks like we actually have 3 rooms here.
I know. All of a sudden it's like, wow, so much space for activities. It's definitely not its own dining room, but it sort of created this part of this room as the dining zone. And artwork can also do this. I actually just switched up the placement of the artwork next to my secretary desk to make it feel more cohesive with the desk and just tie it all together and sort of create that as its own little nook. All right, let's move on to my next tip, and that is to get rid of unnecessary packaging whenever possible. I find extra packaging can take up so much more space than is necessary, and in a small house, you need to take advantage of every nook and cranny that you have. So let's look at some examples for what I mean here. In my kitchen, I tried to remove lots of foods and snacks from boxes that they come in because the boxes take up tons of space. I mean, here's a box of my daughter's little teething crackers, and here's the space that it takes up. But if I remove it, you can see the footprint of space taken up is so much smaller. Not to mention, once I've used up a few of these teething crackers, I'm literally taking up the space of an entire box in my pantry to hold 1 or 2 crackers. Another example is in the fridge. I always get so annoyed when my husband will put an entire 6-pack in the fridge because the second 1 bottle is removed, now there's a whole wasted spot in my fridge. Even just regular packaging in general, I feel like when things get shipped to us nowadays, they send it in like so much more boxes and packaging than necessary, and all this stuff just becomes extra clutter. It takes up valuable space, so whenever available, always think about what you can take out of packaging. One other tip that I love is, if available in your house, make any use of outdoor space. We created basically like a second living room on our front porch, and it totally feels like a whole nother room in this house. We live in New England, so we can't use it year round, but we make use of this space a good 7 to 8 months out of the year, and honestly, it feels like a whole nother room. We also recently added a deck off the back of our house, and again, it's this huge extension on our home, just making it feel so much larger. So don't neglect outdoor space, because it can really make you feel like you have way more space than you do. All right, my next tip is to minimize surface clutter. There is really something about having flat surfaces clear in a room that will make your space feel more spacious. So one of my favorite tricks is what I call the flat surface rule. So it's to work on getting in the habit of multiple times a day removing anything from flat surfaces that do not need to be there. By flat surfaces, I mean things like countertops, tables, shelves, and so on. And I know at first the idea of this can sound really daunting, but if you actually do it multiple times throughout the day, just as you're like walking from one room to the other, or you get up to pee really quick or whatever, your clutter remains so minimal that you really don't have to make time to do it. It's just sort of something that happens. It's 60 seconds here, or a minute here, or 15 seconds there. You're just kind of being in the constant state of clearing off your flat surfaces. Now, you can also use the 15-minute trick for this if that's easier too. I tell you guys about my 15-minute trick all the time. So you set an alarm on your phone for 15 minutes, and for 15 minutes the goal is just to remove anything from any flat surface. Clear off the counters, clear off your desks, the vanities, the tables. Focus on any flat surface, and you will be amazed how much bigger your space feels when your flat surfaces are not cluttered. All right, my next trick is to give everything in your home a home. The other day, Michael, my husband, came into the kitchen and he was like, do you think we bought a house that was too small? I just feel like we always have stuff out. It's not always fitting. I tripped on a toy when I was walking down the stairs last night. Now, when he came to me, it was a Monday morning. Usually Mondays around here are my put my life back together days. We all have these days, right? My toddler is in daycare Tuesday through Thursday. So by Monday, things like tidying and picking up have often taken back burners. So typically when my toddler naps on Mondays, it's my hustle on the house time. I finish up lingering laundry, I rotate out toys, I clean the play corner, I put away random things that have been sitting out, I meal prep, I clean the fridge, just get my life back on track for the week, right? Anyways, the point of this long story is that when he came down that morning, there were more things out than usual. And so yes, the house totally felt like it was bursting at the seams a little bit. It was really easy to fall into the trap of, I don't think that we have enough space, right? I think our house is too small. But the real problem was things just weren't where they go. And when things aren't where they belong, or things don't have a place that they belong in your house, they end up on counters and corners, on tables, on the floor, and this is what makes your house feel like it's bursting at the seams and feel too small. So one of my best tips is to get really diligent about everything having a home in your house. If it comes into your house, it needs to have a place that it belongs. When things have a place that they go, it makes it so much easier to keep things tidied up, to put them away, because you're not looking at a pile of clutter and like not knowing what to do with it. You have a wallet, you have a spot where that goes. You have some pens laying around, you have a spot where they go. You see your headphones sitting on the table, they have a spot that they go. Now, along with giving things spots in your home where they belong, some things just don't have spots, and that's because they probably don't need to be in your home anymore, right? So here's the thing about stuff. Stuff accumulates more stuff. When you have a big home, this may take longer to realize. You've got ample closets and rooms and places where your stuff can go. But in a small house, any extra stuff becomes really apparent really fast. As people, we have a lot of methods and mechanisms in which things enter our home, right? Mail, packages, gifts, schoolwork, shopping trips, and so on, but we don't often have a lot of methods for then getting stuff out of our house. We tend to have a lot more methods for things coming in than things going out. So it's very easy for more to come in than is actually going out, and thus we end up with too much. And that's why my next tip is to become a daily declutterer. A daily declutterer. You're somebody who declutters. A declutterer. It's a declutterer. You know what I mean? Very often when we think declutter, we think to ourselves that it needs to be this like big thing that we do a few times a year, but I have found it is about 1,000,000 times more effective if you instead focus on decluttering a little bit every single day. I try to find one small thing in my house to declutter every single day, and it usually takes me less than 5 minutes. Sometimes it takes me 10 minutes. Sometimes it takes me 1 minute. But the idea is it's just one small thing in one small sliver of time. So it's very achievable and I can do it every day. And it is a far more effective way to keep my small house from feeling cluttered. All right, my final tip is get creative with storage. Sometimes in small houses, you gotta think outside the box when it comes to storing things. We can't use some of the normal spots that people with bigger homes maybe could. Things like closets or shelving is often limited. But I challenge you to really look around because you can often find storage in all kinds of places. And I know this to be true because this is not the first small house I've had. This is actually the biggest place I've ever lived in. So I've lived in smaller, and you can get creative when it comes to storing things. Just really look around your space. So I use a big basket on top of our pantry closet to store all of our dog stuff for Olive. I have a long shelf along the top of our bathroom for extra storage space up there. I got our son a crib with a drawer underneath so I can store his sheets and his pull-ups in there. We have a trundle bed that's going to save us a lot of space, but we still have room for guests to sleep when they come to visit. The point is, if you're willing to just think a little bit outside of the box with standard storage places, you can actually find you have a lot more room than you might originally think. All right, guys, that does it. Like I said, I really do truly like living in smaller spaces. Yes, there are some challenges, but at the end of the day, I like how it forces me to be really mindful about what's in my house and about how it's taught me to get into some habits, some like daily decluttering and tidying habits that just keep the space from feeling like it's bursting at the seams all the time. Sure, sometimes it is bursting at the seams all the time. You come by on like a Sunday night, this house is, there's a 7-month-old and almost 3-year-old, and they're running around and this house is bursting at the seams, but in general. But then once they're asleep, because of these methods and these little tips and tricks I've used, it is like this to get everything back together. As always, thank you so much for stopping by and watching. I hope you are having a fantastic day, and I will see you all in my next video.